Hello and welcome into the My Wheelhouse Basketball podcast on the We Got Balls podcast network. I'm your host, Seamus McNamara, joined today, Sunday, March 13th, Selection Sunday, by my dear friends and co-hosts, Steve Trudeau and Biddies Natola. What's going on, gentlemen? How are we feeling?
I am having a celebratory Hennessy because Tom Brady's coming back. So this is for you, Tom.
Seamus, it's that time of the week for you, soccer talk. We basically got the 2016 OKC Thunder collapse. We got that in the Champions League. Paris Saint-Germain, just a really brutal collapse against Real Madrid in Madrid.
I was watching that game this morning, and PSG was up 1-0, and they were up 2-0 in aggregate. That's aggregate, by the way, Seamus. They played multiple games, and they collapsed. I cannot believe it.
And PSG star is likely headed to Madrid this summer, so it's really right down to the details for the 16 Thunder comparison.
Lots of drama going on in international soccer. Good for those guys. Today in the basketball world, we got a lot going on. The season's winding down. We're closer to the 10-game left mark for a lot of teams. Obviously, we're going to probably see some resting of players and stuff like that. Attention is going to be shifting to some March Madness. As I said off the rip, today was when the brackets were released. I actually haven't looked at those yet, but I'm sure my week will be filled with picking teams moving forward. I usually gear towards prospect-heavy rosters purely because I want to see those guys play more. Today, I would like to discuss potentially some people in the tournament, but more so probably just young players that are standing out. We're each going to go over our top 5 players, NBA or younger, not in the league yet, or overseas. I didn't have any restrictions. The only limitation was 21 years older or younger. I don't think I broke my own rules, but I may have stretched them to a degree, and stretching of the rules is encouraged in this aspect. So that should be good, and then maybe we'll have a nightcap at the end with some trivia from Mr. Hennessy over there. But before we do that, let's jump into the details of the past week since we last talked.
Let's check out what happened around the league this week. It's time for my Wheelhouse Rapid Recap.
Victor Oladipo returns and looking spry for the Miami Heat. Greg Popovich surpasses Don Nelson for the most wins ever, regular season, NBA coach. Kyrie Irving scores 50 points on only 19 shot attempts. Incredibly efficient performance from the vaccine vagabond. The Knicks smack the Mavericks by 40. Jalen Green takes the Lakers to the pasture as the Rockets top LeBron in overtime. Maxey and Harden dud, and the Nets cruise past the Sixers in the first meeting since the Simmons-Harden trade. LeBron puts up another 50-piece, first time in his career that he scored 50 in multiple games in the same season. Finally, Markieff Morris returns. Remember him? Markieff Morris played a basketball game after getting clobbered and his neck flopping in the wind from Nikola Jokic. Markieff is back on the court. Klay Thompson scores 38. Most points he's scored in a game since March of 2019, carrying the Warriors in a convincing win over the Bucks last night, where Steph was really taken out of the game. He looked awesome on both ends of the floor. Alex Caruso returns. Kevin Durant earlier today had a 50-burger. And we just saw number 5 for the Boston Celtics, Kevin Garnett's jersey, get raised up into the rafters. I wonder what the over-under for F-bombs in his speech was, because he probably hit the over. But respect to Kevin Garnett and all of the people he touches every day. I spent the weekend watching a lot of old KG games. He's just one of the most unique players ever, and was really I feel so bad for him watching the Minnesota years where he's just tied down by Trenton Hassel and just big men that are just, they can't make wide open layups. And it's just, I feel bad. I left my watching of Kevin Garnett feeling bad for him in his early stages. And I'm happy that he's able to get his due respect with the Boston Celtics, the team that he brought to the promised land. What stood out for you guys this past week?
So I'm glad you mentioned the Kyrie thing, because I saw a little blurb on SportsCenter in the morning about that performance. We had 50 points. So that performance was actually the highest true shooting percentage by a player in a game that they scored over 50 points. And I have the top 5. I thought it was really interesting. So Kyrie's true shooting percentage in that game was 101.1, which means in theory he shot over 100%. I mean, they factor in the threes count more, but it's crazy how efficient that was. Number 2, Fred VanVleet, 100.1 in 2021. 3, Jamal Murray, 100. Kyrie Irving, another performer in the top 5. Number 4, 98.5 in 2020. A guy named Dana Barros. Wasn't sure of him, did not know of him.
Damn.
Back in 1990.
Celtic.
He did this performance with the 76ers. He went 21 for 26. And then Steph Curry rounds out the top 6, I guess. But what really stood out to me was, man, Kyrie Irving is not only a great scorer, but, man, that guy might be the most efficient guard of all time. The way he scores, super efficient, super impressive.
No argument. I'm going to go ahead, toot my own horn. Last time we got together, did advise the listening public to go ahead, just take Giannis for MVP. What does he do this week? Averages 37.7 points per game over 3 games, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. And the Bucks just close strong and make some money for our listeners. Giannis, you got this.
I was a believer that Jokic was going to be the MVP last week. I still stand by that. I think Embiid and Jokic and Giannis all had MVP performances in the last week. We saw multiple. I don't know if Embiid had a 30-point triple-double, but Nikola Jokic had a couple of those, and it's going to be a tight race, but I feel like Jokic is ahead right now for good reason, and I don't know if those other guys will pass by them, but it could be possible. With that said, let's jump into our 5 favorite players, some young guys to look forward to. The future of the league is in really good hands, and watching basketball this past week, I found myself really gravitating towards teams where the focus of my attention and the entire reason for me turning on a specific game was to focus on a guy who couldn't even drink alcohol yet. So I wanted to touch on a handful of these guys. I shot it out to you guys and said no limitation for you could choose people in college or maybe in a different league. I think we go from 5 to 1. I don't think there's going to be any surprise on who my number 1 is, and we'll probably talk about him for a while at the end of the show. But Steve, who's your number 5 favorite under 21 basketball player?
You know, I'm going to defer to Biddy's. I'll go last on this one. Yeah, I'm going to defer. I need to get my list together. I'm unprepared today.
Jeez Louise.
Okay. At number 5, and you're going to see that a theme appears from my picks, and my number 5 might just give it away because without the theme, I don't think he's making anybody's top 5 list. But my number 5, a fella down in Houston by the name of Alperen Şengün. If you have not been on the Rockets Twitter feed, you got to check it out because Şengün has a lovely personality. He's a funny guy. He's still kind of figuring out English and American sense of humor, and he's doing a really good job at it. So the personality alone has me gripped, and it carries over on the floor. He just seems like he's enjoying playing the game, even at times that he doesn't exactly look like he knows what he's doing. Good big man passer. That's always fun to watch. And he's just a unique player. There's not a lot of guys like him in the league who have that passing ability, who have the low post scoring ability. Tons of flaws in his game. I don't think he's a franchise player, but I'm very glad that Şengün has landed here in these United States.
I'm a huge Şengün fan. I hope all of your picks are international players with fun names, but we'll find out moving forward. I was listening to a podcast recently talking about the MVP race and talking about the unlikelihood of players that are rising to become an NBA player in the future being similar or being of the same archetype as these players that we have in the MVP race right now, and that being Jokic, Embiid, Giannis, lesser so like Steph Curry and LeBron. And the conversation geared towards not being surprised if we saw another Joel Embiid, just a dominant low post big who is a defensive monster, and people like not saying that there's going to be an exact facsimile of Steph, but a shoot heavy guard with range like him, like something like that could happen. We see mocks of LeBron come in and out of the league, but Jokic is really an abnormal player in terms of a similar comp with the feel that he has for the game on offensive end and just overall his ability to impact the game. And the only two players that this specific podcast cited as being even remote facsimile is like Sabonis, who's maybe, I don't know, what, 70% Jokic. And then they said Alperen Sengun, and Sengun's like, he's only like a 20% Sabonis. 20% Jokic, whatever it is. But he has some of those same vibes to him in terms of how he plays the game offensively. He's really herky-jerky and unusual with how he moves. He really looks like he's going to like dislocate his shoulder with some of his movements when he's like driving to the rim. He really flails around, but he's really, really fun. And he what's frustrated me most about watching Rockets basketball, and they've looked better as of late. I talked about how they had that nice win over Lakers in overtime, is the minutes that Sengun plays alongside the other young cornerstones of their roster, in more significantly Jalen Green, but lesser so also Kevin Porter Jr., are not nearly high enough. He doesn't play, the minute totals are like way too low. Like they need to be playing together. They need to be working out the kinks in the game, figuring out those are the two players with the highest ceilings on their roster, the two or three players with the higher ceilings on the roster. And they need to see if that recipe works. And it's aggravating that I haven't been able to see them to play together as much as I think would make sense if you were a young roster that's rebuilding. And Jalen Green's been incredible. He didn't make my five. Maybe he did for one of you guys, but he's been incredible as of late. And Sengun, in theory, his skill set offensively meshes really, really well with someone who's explosive around the perimeter like Jalen Green. But I'm a big Sengun guy. Are you on Team Sengun over there, Steve?
No, I think he's an interesting young player. I'm not as high as some other people, but I think with the whole not playing Sengun with some of the other young players, you would say right now Christian Wood's better as a basketball player than Sengun, yes?
Yeah.
And like a coach is not thinking, I need to play a guy to make the team better in 2 or 3 years because of chemistry. The coach is like, I need to win to save my job and to be thought of as a competent coach. So I understand why he's probably playing Sengun in the second unit. I mean, to answer your question. But, he could be a great player in the future. He's got a weird skill set. I was impressed the time he took on Giannis one-on-one in the post. He was not afraid. So he's a guy who just won't back down. So we'll see what happens. But a good number 5. I like that. Solid pick, Biddies.
Do you have his per 36 numbers in front of you, Biddies? They're interesting.
I do not have the per 36.
So his per 36 it's a good window to look into players that are low usage, low minute totals, but just to see how they're impacting the game when they're on the court. We talked earlier before we started recording about Markelle Fultz, who unfortunately is too old to qualify for this list, but he probably would have been on my 5 if I wanted to stretch the rules like crazy. But how successful he's been statistically in low amounts of minutes. Sengun's per 36 are 17 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal and a half, 2 blocks a game. It's exciting. His archetype is cool. My only nervousness about him, Biddies, can he be? I don't even know. Can he be league average defensively? Like, can he be okay? Because right now he's probably one of the 5 worst defenders in the entire league, and he doesn't do a lot of things. Sometimes he has like okay timing, similar to like what we saw early on from Jokic. And he early was a terrible defender, and he's gotten to the point where he's above average. Do you think a similar trajectory could be there for Sengun? Because I'm not certain.
I don't think so. I think Sabonis is a much more reasonable and realistic best case scenario for Sengun, where even if everything works out for him and he really does maximize his skill set, I do think he's going to still be an awkward fit around a lot of other players. And he is going to need to, or whatever team has him is going to need to figure out the right circumstances for him, or else they'll kind of be on a mediocrity treadmill like we've seen with Sabonis.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm with it. All right, Steve, are you still holding out, or do I have to do my number 5 player before you?
Well, I thought we were going 5-1 each, but I can go number 5.
Wow, each one. Sure, let's do it. Biddies, what's your number 4 player? Let's keep going. Knock him out.
My number 4 player, coming out of Serbia, is Nikola Jovic.
Yes.
I love this list so far, by the way.
Okay, so Jovic is a 6'10" wing, and can legit play shooting guard, puts the ball on the floor, has shown a knack to get to the basket, also facilitates for his teammates, and he's a lot more athletic than what you think of a guard coming out of Europe, of a 6'10" player coming out of Europe. He's a much better athlete than most white European players that we've seen come over. So with that type of style, I think he's just going to transition well into the pro game. He can shoot. He is not going to be a liability on defense like a lot of people worry about with a player coming over from Europe. And I think the potential is there for him to fit in really well on any team because he's got the height. Even if he's a below average defender, I don't think he's ever going to get killed because he is tall enough and a good enough athlete to stick with guys.
How tall is he? 6'10"?
6'10".
So I've only watched highlights. I haven't dove into him in depth yet. From what I can tell, he's kind of in the teens range of this draft coming up. I've heard people who are really high on him earlier in the draft cycle before we had the college basketball burst kick some of the players up that weren't there. He was as high as 10 in some spots, but now he's kind of settled kind of lower in that, kind of more at the edge of the lottery, closer to probably 20. All I know about him so far is he has a lot of on-ball equity, and just someone with that size, that's all the allure that you need. You're young, you can succeed with the ball in your hands as a ball handler and just a playmaker and a creator for yourself. That's interesting. From what I remember, I feel like I liked his shot, how it looked. I don't think his numbers are that significant. Is maybe like other international prospects, it's probably because he's not playing a ton. Is he playing a lot?
U19 World Cup, he put up, or whatever it's called, he put up let's see, he put up 18, 8, and 3 assists per game and was named to the all-tournament team.
Yeah, he's good. I think he's worth a flyer. If you're one of those teams that's in those teens, like I could absolutely see he's perfect, like a Thunder player. Like they have a pick that's going to be in that range. They have a pick that's probably going to be 15, 16. I would not be shocked at all if he was the player that they jumped for there, purely because this class, as I look deeper and deeper into it, and I'm kind of slow in my approach into that area of the draft this year in comparison to other years. It doesn't seem like there's that many high ceiling guys in that range after you get outside the top 10. So just someone like that whose size and skill set could show out to be something impressive if everything goes right. I think that's worth taking a swing. Trudeau, have you watched any Jovic at all?
Now, what league is this?
Serbia.
Yeah, see, I'm more of like Croatian league. I haven't watched a lot of Serbian league. My expert draft analysis on this is his first name is Nikola. I know two Nikolas I know in my entire life, and it's Jokic and Vucevic, and both have been NBA All-Stars. So I feel like if your name is Nikola, probably good at basketball.
What about Mirotic? You don't remember Mirotic?
Oh,
wow, the guy who got punched in the face by Bobby Portis.
Yes,
him. Hopefully Jovic's career goes better than his. Okay, I like him. Who's your number 3?
Number 3. Let's bring it back to the NBA. And listen, this is a Coach Mark Dagnall podcast, so we're gonna go with Josh Giddey.
Yes, great.
I love Giddey. I think he has a really strong basketball IQ and a flair for entertainment, which leaves us with some really flashy passes that are fun to watch. He's got a knack for triple doubles, grabbing a lot of boards and filling up the stat sheet. Very versatile player. And next to Shea, and with a potentially massive Jet Holmgren type domino falling, things get really interesting in Oklahoma City, and I think he's shown the ability, or at least the promise, that he could be a real number 2 or number 3 on a really good team already during his rookie year. Obviously, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of losing there in Oklahoma City, but Giddey can play.
Yeah, I mean, I like Giddey. Might be one of the best young prospects, but probably one of the worst young prospect haircuts. It looks like
you're hating on the hair. His hair is beautiful. What is wrong with you? That's the worst take. If I was on Around the Horn, I would mute you right now. What kind of take was that? That was crazy. This hair is glorious.
He looks like a Super Saiyan. It's just going up and to the side. It's crazy. But on
this guy's insulting Super Saiyan hair. Super Saiyan hair is luxurious and luscious. What do you mean?
He doesn't have quite Super Saiyan hair. Super Saiyan hair is still top of the hair rung, but it's
probably the worst take that we've ever had in my wheelhouse.
It's like saying Steph Curry is a bad shooter.
Listen,
I feel like I would list him in my top 5 of hair in the league. Okay, what do you like his game?
Josh Giddey. Google Josh Giddey and look at his hair. But no, on a serious note, like Josh Giddey, I like him. I just think he's a fun player, though. Like, regardless of how good he ends up, he's a fun player to watch. He's just exciting. So I love him on your list. And will say, be careful. We need a little diversity here. You have quite a strong theme going on, Benny.
Okay.
I'm
coming back around. Don't worry.
Before you name your next white guy, I'm in on Giddey as well. He's a part of this historic draft class. The Thunder are going to be happy with him moving forward. He's already one of the 10 best passers in the league. He's interesting. I find when I follow Thunder Twitter or just Thunder coverage in general, it seems like the Thunder consensus is like not impatient, but is struggling to comprehend how a primary ball handler of Giddey and a secondary creator of Shea can mesh together, because we haven't had a big sample size of it yet this year. It's been a lot of Giddey succeeding while Shea's out, Shea succeeding while Giddey's out. Right now, Giddey isn't playing, correct? So it's been, there he is. It's great hair. You look great. Look at that mop. I would kill for that. I would kill for that hair.
Some serious bedhead.
That's a man.
I wish my bedhead looked like that, but he's extremely talented. His feel for the game is through the roof. I just feel like he's one of those players that you want on your team. And defensively, I see the chops there enough for him to be reputable, purely because he's going to be like huge. Like he's going to be big. Like he's got a big set of shoulders. He's what is he, 6'7"? How tall is he?
Yeah, 6'7", 6'8".
So I think that he's just size-wise alone, and purely because he's got a very, very high IQ, he's going to be able to handle himself on that end of the floor. And his shot has come a long way. It's come leaps and bounds from what it was in Australia last year, but it's still not anything to write home about, but I think it could come around. And I think that with Presti at the helm, this team is going to do their best to surround Giddey and Shea with the right subsidiary pieces that they should be able to maximize their potential. I mean, it doesn't even need to be Chet. I mean, if they get shanked in the draft lottery again and they drop to 6 like they did with Giddey, and obviously it's worked out, even though they would probably prefer 1 or 2 of the guys that was picked above them. If they get shanked and they still end up with like Jalen Duren would be an awesome fit with Giddey. Just giving him someone with some vertical spacing, a better pick and roll threat to work off of him. Because right now he's playing with like Jeremiah Robinson Earl and Mike Muscala and Derek Favors. So he doesn't have a lot to work with outside of creating for himself, drawing the defenders and kicking out to shooters. So I think he's going to only continue to look more and more dynamic as the team improves and progresses.
And they have all that cap space. So if whoever they get, they're going to get another like top 5-6 pick this year. And with all that cap space, I can see them just saying like, okay, we're done tanking. We might have to overpay a guy or two to come in here, but we want Shea playing some real basketball. We want the guys to have something to play for, the fans something to watch. And also we own Houston draft picks. We have some Houston draft capital. They can tank for us and we'll go ahead and win some games here.
LeBron's a big Presti fan, so the cap space.
I wouldn't be surprised if they signed like an older vet just to kind of try to be an adult in the locker room, guide them towards a playoff berth. depending on how this draft shakes out, like if they get two pieces, if they get two top 6 guys, maybe they do kind of lean away from it, knowing that similar to the Celtics and how their future was tied to the Nets, and they could succeed as an individual team and not worry about not having a high draft pick because their draft picks were tied to another team's failure.
Mhm.
This team can go that same way. They can succeed over their head, and they can not worry about tanking their own draft slots back to the high end of the 10 to 14 range, and they could still end up with a good pick. So I like it. I like the direction of the team, and I like Giddey. Who's your number? What are we at, 2?
Okay, yeah, we are going to diversify here. I'm sure the listeners at home can see the trend that's going on. And listen, we're just in the midst of what's going to be like a decade-long stretch where the MVP award is just dominated by international players. We got a couple Giannis ones. We've got Jokic. This year is going to be Embiid, Jokic, or Giannis. Those 3 guys are going to be in the mix in the future. Luka is like the next man up. So that's why I'm going all these international players. This next guy is an American who played internationally instead of going to college. And that's the Charlotte Hornets, LaMelo Ball. I mean, just thinking about LaMelo, I mean, on this podcast, talking about All-Star, we just said send LaMelo there. Like he's putting up the numbers, and even more so, just the play style and the personality are so attractive to watch and consume. That's just like, this guy is a star, both in terms of his success on the floor and just the gravity that he has and the way that he's able to lift up all the guys around him. So he's just been incredible to watch. And I mean, when he got drafted, everybody had the knives out. People were already writing the article that, you know, this whole circus with his dad, it is the thing that's going to sink his ship. And instead, he's really just shown a ton of maturity. And it's a case where, you know, the kid has had 1 million Instagram followers probably since he was like 13. And he's had all this focus, all this fame, all this attention on him. And he's just handled it very well. He's not perfect, but he's handled it very well. And I think he's also a very fun what if in NBA history that we're going to be looking back on 10 years from now, because what if he did go number 2 in the draft and could have been the real, you know, the third Splash brother that then kind of took the keys from Steph. That'll be a fun one. And I have high hopes that down in Charlotte, where they basically spun their wheels for 2 decades, trying to find some relevance, that he's their superstar and he's going to take them into contention.
Well, first, I didn't realize he was under 21 years old. That's impressive as hell. I thought he was way older. I thought he was like 22 or something like that. I know he's a second-year player.
Way older than 21.
But like, just he's a young 20 as well. His birthday is August 22nd. I just looked it up. So he doesn't turn 21 until after this NBA season. And I think you made a great point, Biddy, where like he's already been through so much at such a young age. Like his dad pulled him out of school, threw him to Lithuania, I believe, to play some ball. And you would think like the circus around him would just kind of deteriorate who he is as a person. Maybe he would, I don't know, not be as focused, as driven, or, you know, as serious about basketball. But this guy just can do everything. Like I don't see many flaws in his game. He's super young. He's very big for a point guard, so he can defend really well. I love LaMelo Ball. Like I wish my franchise had him. He can be a guy that just anchors your franchise for 10, 15 years, and you're going to be super happy with him. So I love that. Might be like a sneaky number 1 for some, maybe Shea. I don't know who's number 1 above him, but great number 2.
Yeah, LaMelo didn't make my 5, but he's great. He's one of the more surprising players to, I don't know, surprising in terms of what I was expecting from him coming into the draft. I think my NBA comp for him was Snapchat Hedo Turkoglu, so he's obviously surpassed that by a good degree.
Whoa. Hedo Turkoglu was a great Magic player. All right.
Yeah, I love Hedo Turkoglu. I think Hedo's great. I meant all the respect in the world towards Hedo. But LaMelo, I spoke earlier how Giddey is one of the 10 best passers. I mean, LaMelo is one of the 3 best passers in the league. There's a reason that the Hornets, ever since he got there, are one of the most watchable teams in the league. He's got some dynamite players alongside him. The growth of Miles Bridges has done wonders for LaMelo as the leader of that franchise. We still see hiccups here and there, but that'll come with a young player. I mean, we're talking about 21-year-olds here, so I'm all in on LaMelo. I think he's awesome, and he's worth watching for years to come. I don't know if he has the same like scoring upside and defensive upside as a lot of the hullabaloo would make you think that he could be an MVP candidate down the line. So I don't know if I would put him in that company, but he's probably one of the 35 best players in the league right now, 40 best players in the league right now. And I see no reason why he can't be a top 25 guy for the long haul.
How do you think Jello Ball feels about the whole situation? Because he's middle child,
He's thinking about all the watches he thieved over the years, and he's all nervous about going down the wrong path.
Well, I think he's got some G League shots out of it.
Yeah, he hit like 8 threes in a G League game once. I mean, he's doing fine. He's living successfully. I'm sure that he hangs out with both his brothers all the time. Biddies, who's your number one player?
Number one, he just turned 18 in January.
Yes.
Victor Wembanyama. I'll just call him Victor. So Victor is French, plays in the French league. And if you're giving it a Google or a YouTube search right now, the very first thing that you're going to notice about Victor is that he is enormous. He is 7'2". He looks so huge on the floor with all those European guys. Like I said, he just turned 18, so I wouldn't be surprised if he grows even bigger and is the biggest player in the league when he gets drafted to the NBA. Touch around the rim looks really pretty. I like that. He's got a good shooting stroke. I even seen a highlight where he knows to fall down to try to get the whistle on the three-pointer. Defensively, I think that he's all right now. He's good at using his length to recover when he's playing perimeter defense. Obviously, at 7'2", he's a presence around the rim to block shots as well. But I think I see the potential for him to really use that length as a weapon. He's got good feet underneath him. He can move laterally. So I think defensive upside is very high. And then I think he's just got a good nature as he approaches the game. He puts the ball on the floor. It doesn't look really pretty right now. Obviously, it's never going to look pretty for a guy who's as big as him, but just the willingness that he's going to put the ball on the floor and like dunk over people, that gets me excited. That tells me that he's willing to kind of go out of his comfort zone, maybe fail a little bit early on, and in the long run, be a really special player with a level of talent that we don't typically see in a guy who might be like 7'3" or 7'4" when he gets to the league and kind of projects as like an upgraded Porzingis.
This is crazy. Like, I've never heard of this guy in my life, but I want to know more now. It's Victor Wembanyama, for those listening. He is 16 years old, 7'2" with a.
He's 18. He's 18 now.
He's 18 now. This is an old article. I should have checked the date. It's from August 2020. So there you go.
He'll be in next. He should be in next year's draft.
But yeah, I mean, when he was 16, he had a 7'2" height with a 7'10" wingspan. He's like French Mo Bamba. So this guy looks impressive as hell. I have no idea. When's he coming in the draft?
It's supposed to be
next year. So Wembanyama was my number 5 on my list. Wemby, if players from next year were allowed to be in this draft, Wembanyama would get picked over Chet. He would get picked over Paolo. He would get picked over Jabari. He would get picked over all these guys. He's the best prospect in the world. Everything that Biddy said is 1,000% truthful. He is going to be a game-wrecking defensive presence, and the fluidity that he has on the offensive end of the floor surpasses that of a player like Porzingis, and the finishing ability that he has on the rims, around the rim, is similar to what we saw out of Kentucky and young Karl Towns. So I think how his game is shaking out, as long as he can stay healthy, because he has obviously a crazy frame. He has more weight and mass to him than someone like Chet does already. So I'm more confident that he's going to be able to build out in a more impressive way, where that's actually a more legitimate concern with someone like Holmgren. But Wembanyama, he's a generational prospect. Like this draft right here, this 2022 draft that doesn't have any tier 1 guys. Wembanyama, he's a tier 1 guy, and he deserves attention now ahead of his draft cycle because he is probably one of the better draft prospects that the league is going to see. I mean, he has got the full arsenal. He's an incredible vertical lob threat. His hands are fantastic, but he's saying that. I mean, he's really got. And I don't see any way that he's not incredibly awesome unless it's injury related. So as long as he can stay on the court, I think he's a multi-time All-Star. He's a player who defensively, even when he gets out in space, his ability to recover, to be able to handle on the perimeter responsibly enough at a young level. He doesn't get too left-feeted often. You know what I mean? He doesn't get tied up or tripped up. I've watched a good amount of him already, and I'm incredibly impressed. He plays above his age level frequently, and I think that it's really funny. The first person who ever told me about Wembanyama was actually my Uncle Mike. My Uncle Mike told me about him when he was like 15, and he said, this guy's a freakazoid. Like this guy's 7 feet tall, and he has a 7'5" wingspan. I mean, he's only 15 years old, but you should go watch some film. So I've been watching film ever since then, and he's filled out in all the right ways, and he's fantastic. So he's an awesome choice. I care more about him and about the number 4 name on my list than I do about any of the guys in this draft, in the 2022 draft, the players that we're going to be watching throughout this month in April. They aren't going to be as groundbreaking in terms of the infusion of their talent to the league as the players in the 2023 draft. And those are just 2 names, like never mind the guys that are going to be able to come around them. But I love Wembanyama. Good choice, good top, deserving number 1 overall selection. Steve, do you want to go second?
I will defer to you.
Okay, we're deferring. So Wembanyama was my 5. He's awesome. Yeah. As I alluded to, my number 4 is Scoot Henderson. Scoot is a young guard who's currently in the G League. He is 18, and I think he just turned 18 last month. He's like 6'3". He's got some bulk to him. He's almost 200 pounds already, and he's got NBA size. I'm sure some people were introduced to him in the All-Star weekend when he participated as one of the G League players. He didn't play a lot in that exhibition, but that's probably how you're familiar with his name so far. Just to familiarize yourself with him more, he's not playing a ton. He's playing like 20 minutes. He had a burst in the middle of the season where he had a couple 30-point games, a couple highlight poster dunks, and I think he's averaging around 14 points a game. Nothing's going to stand off the page stats-wise from him, but if you go and watch his high school film and even some of his G League film, he's like a 99th percentile athlete. That's the thing that he brings to the table more than anything else. He has a really good feel for the game. He's not an incredible passer, but he's an above average passer. And his fluidity and elasticity mid-air is very Derrick Rose, John Morant. Name your explosive guard who dunks on 7-footers, and Scoot is the next kin to that bloodline, and he's awesome. Defensively, he's more of a dog than a lot of those similar archetype players were at younger levels. I like his ability on the ball to be a hawk around the perimeter. He picks up 94 feet and at half court frequently when he plays, and he's often barking and getting into opponents' heads. So I love his mentality. He's intense, and he's just got a beautiful name to be an awesome basketball player for a long time. So I highly recommend watching Scoot games, Scoot highlight tapes. Inject as much Scoot as you can into your veins because he's going to be in the NBA for a long time. And he's I feel
like you're telling the listeners to take illicit drugs. Inject as much.
Take some Scoot. Take the Scoot. Take the Scoot. Inject the Scoot. Yes, I mean he's where people get like nervous about certain players, and we just talked about how you can be nervous about a Porzingis or a Wembanyama or a Holmgren because of their long, skinny frame. It goes the other way with players like Ja and Derrick Rose, where because they're small and because of the explosive style that they play, it's more conducive to something nervous and nerve-wracking happening, like a leg injury or what have you. I find that he's in control more than these players were at a young age too. Not that he's like more reserved, but that could be a good word to use. I think that he picks his spots and he plays the game. Thinks the game in terms of what percentage of the gas to push. I think he has a good finger on the pulse of when to max out, when not to max out, not taking any unusual risks. But I look forward to, obviously, the scouting notebook from him is far from written. I've seen less of him than I've seen of someone like Wembanyama, but I look forward to continuing in his scout over the next year and once he gets into the NBA, because he's a legitimate threat to be one of the number one pick next year. And that's after everything I just said about Wembanyama. And I think that Scoot is in that same class. I also would pick Scoot in a similar tier, if not above, guys like Paolo and Chet as well.
So for the listeners a little behind the scene, we have a group chat between us three, and we talk basketball throughout the week and it's yada, yada, yada. So the NBA All-Star game happened. I had no idea who Scoot Henderson was, and I just texted the guys, I don't know if this guy's any good, but I'm drafting him number one because his name is Scoot. Like, if your name is Scoot, you're getting drafted first on my board, unless your name is Dunk or Shooter. Or but he's really good. I've seen him play. He's phenomenal. I just have a question for you, Seamus. How much G League games do you watch? Because you know everybody. I don't understand how you do this.
I mean, it's all about what players are there. I mean, I'm not just wasting my time watching the Iowa Grand Rapids. Like, I don't care about teams that are irrelevant. But like last year, I watched every G League game there was because Jalen Green and Jonathan Kuminga were playing. This year, I've probably watched, I don't know, 5 full games, but I watch highlights for other ones. It's worth watching when there's players worth scouting. It's not worth watching when it's just, oh my God, Isaiah Thomas might score 40. No disrespect to IT, love you IT, but I watched more than the average person.
Yeah. So my intro to Scoot was an article that Howard Beck wrote that I would definitely recommend. I think it came out towards the beginning of the season, all about Scoot's decision to do not just 1, but 2 years of G League Ignite. And I pulled it up, and the second paragraph opens with the best 17-year-old I've ever seen, says Celtic star Jaylen Brown. So anything Jaylen says is definitely going to land big with me. And reading about that, you really get an idea of just the very serious business-like approach that Scoot takes to basketball, to his game, as well as the support of his family in pushing him to that next level and putting him in a position where at 16, 17, he could decide to move across the country from Georgia to California to play for the Ignite. And I think that this is the model. As we know, I'm the My Wheelhouse, I'm the We Got Balls soccer expert, and this is how the best teams in Europe build their future stars. Is they don't worry about winning the ACC by playing some ugly basketball. Instead, they build really well-rounded players, and by going to the Ignite, I think Scoot is going to have a more well-rounded game than we've seen a lot of guys come into the league with, because the focus is on just skill development, and winning at Maryland is not the biggest deal. And then, as you said, Shay, the body, he looks like he could be in the NBA right now, even though he's just a kid. So I think Scoot's going to be awesome, and I'm in agreement that he would be top prospect of this draft.
Now, I'm with you on the whole idea of the G League Ignite. Like, I think it was an amazing idea like a couple of years ago when there was no way for players to get paid in college. But with this NIL stuff, I feel like you're going to see now less players want to do the Ignite thing, because you can probably make just as much money and then be like the big man on campus and just like run shit. Like if you're at Ohio State or Arizona or one of these big schools.
Top prospects were getting paid no matter what. The NIL just makes it front page news rather than under the table news. I mean, the difference isn't whether or not you're going to get paid or not. It's the relationships that you can build and what the being in the NBA funnel system can do for your development. I think being around the just the assets that the G League can give to you, it's, I mean, I don't want to say it's 1,000%. It's a better choice than going to college because there's merits to both. But I can see how someone would choose the G League, even if they're getting $1 million. I bet you there's a handful of teams that in college that I'd give envelopes of $1 million to prospects, but I don't think that's commonplace. And NIL deals are not going to give players $1 million unless they're
seven figures regularly now.
Unless it's like a generational guy and a headlining prospect. But I think that both paths are good. And I don't think that NIL is enough of a differentiating factor to erase something like the G League Ignite, because I think it's more about the intertwining, getting into an NBA system, understanding the day in and day out process of NBA lifestyle, and just understanding more about what you need to do and what you need not to do to succeed at the next level. If you go to college, even if you're getting paid, it's still a stepping stone. So in my opinion, I think it can be more rewarding to get into that system earlier.
But those college parties, man, are a good time.
Yeah, sure. They can go to parties regardless. I don't know. Yes. I don't think they went to the same high school, but Scoot is from Marietta, which is also where Jalen is from. So obviously we respect people from Marietta greatly because of Jalen Brown. My number 3 player, I was going to say, I had a couple other players that didn't make the cut were like Devin Vassell, Isaac Okoro. I had those two guys number 1 and 2 on my draft board last year or 2 years ago when LaMelo Ball, I think I had 6, but I ended up leaving those guys off. And I just went for some names that have been common names that we've discussed recently on the podcast. My number 3 player is Jonathan Kuminga for the Warriors. I can't kick him. When I watch him play, I can't help but get uneasy about his growth and his ability to be a superstar player. His athleticism, I talked about how Scoot is going to be a 99th percentile athlete. Maybe the player that's going to be higher than him on that scale is Jonathan Kuminga. You watch him play, and his dynamism it jumps off the page. He's incredibly fast for a person with the body that he has, and he's translating it into production. Earlier in the year, it was very theoretical, and he was playing limited minutes. But as of late, he's been one of their more important role players on the entire Warriors roster. He's averaging 15 and 5 since the calendar turned. He's shooting reasonable from beyond the arc, which was one of the concerns for him coming into the league. I think he's above 35%. I think he's around 36, 37% on decent volume. And he's just, it's almost like his scoring, it doesn't come in isolation. It doesn't come on sets that are run from him. It just comes on him capitalizing and him being an imminent presence where he's on top of the rim in a blink of the eye with a putback. He's cutting across the court, and his player is still facing the crowd, thinking he's in the corner, and he's floating in the dunker spot, just waiting for an alley-oop. And that doesn't even touch on what I think is the most impressive and most exciting part of his game, and that's his defensive versatility. Versatility is the name of the game defensively in the NBA today. In my scout for him, watching him in the G League Ignite and watching him in high school, I believed him to be able to be a player that could guard 5 positions. I see nothing in the NBA that hasn't shown me to bore out to be true. In that Warriors game where Klay scored 38, he was the best defender on the floor. He was blowing up pick and roll coverages. He was playing a perfect cat and mouse game, being able to stunt down to the roll men, get back to the shooter. He was blowing anything that the Bucks were trying to run. He was guarding Chris Middleton in high post-ups and forcing difficult fadeaways. He was moving players out of the post when they catch it in good position. He's strong, he's athletic, and he's imposing, and he's in such a good system. We're seeing the Warriors and Kerr wean him in to heavier minutes as the season progresses. I hope when Wiseman returns, which is soon, that doesn't mess up his development and his course, which I'm really excited about. But players like Moody and Kuminga are really blessed to be in the situations they are, because there's a window there for their style of play, their size of their players, and what they offer in terms of their skill sets on both ends of the floor to fit in with the long-term core that is Steph and Klay and Draymond. I said earlier, Don't be surprised if Kuminga gets decent and difference-making 15 minutes in a playoff game. I think you can play him 30 minutes in a playoff game. He's good, and I wish he did like the dunk contest. I want to watch as much Kuminga as possible. He's probably one of my 5 favorite players in the league. Never mind players under 21. So I'm all in on Kuminga and his development. I had him number 2 in the draft, and I see no reason to step off of that, even if other players like Mobley have been more impressive from the start.
Yeah, it's crazy he dropped so much in the draft because I think he was projected top, like the number 5 pick for the entirety of the college season. Then out of nowhere, towards the draft, he slipped to like 6, 7, and eventually went 8th. So I like him. He's been super exciting to watch. I think the upside is he's super athletic and explosive, so he has such a high ceiling. And what he's shown in limited minutes has been very impressive. I love the situation, especially him being Golden State. It's an organization that will teach him the right way to play. So the future is bright for Kuminga, and I'm with you, Shay. Number 3 on your list, right? He could probably go higher than that.
Yeah, I think you guys said it all, and the big thing that stands out to me is that he's been averaging 25 minutes a game since February 1st. And we saw with James Wiseman last year that getting Kerr's trust is a lot easier said than done. So that's something that really stands out to me, that they're throwing him in, especially when they are a bit man down with Draymond.
And he's like motivating winning basketball. Like they're playing him in high leverage minutes against good teams. That win they had against Denver, he was crucial in that game. They played him in the Clipper game that they won by 15, and it wasn't just garbage minutes. He had 21 and 6 and 6 in that game, and he was awesome. And he fell because the second half of the G League year, he had like, it wasn't a knee injury, but it was a leg flare up where he just he played through it, and his stats and his play dipped. And I just think it was kind of swept under the rug that he had an injury. But I mean, I think he's doing a lot better, and it's much better for his development long term that he landed with someone like the Warriors and he slipped to the Warriors rather than going to somewhere, no offense, but going somewhere like if he was picked 5th to the Magic,
yeah,
that wouldn't be good for him because they probably would have overfed him, given him the green light to do whatever he wanted, and he would have delved into the bad habits that we saw from him in high school where he was a high usage guy who really tried to imprint the game offensively and ended up being a low efficiency player. But yeah, I love Jonathan Kuminga. I think he's going to be awesome. My number 2 guy is another player we talk about all the time. He just outplayed. Who did he play yesterday? I just had the game up. I was just watching highlights. My number 2 player is Scotty Barnes.
I wonder who number 1 could be.
Yes, I mean, we're not going to find out. We had 3 rookies here on this list for me. We touched on a few of them with Giddey in our last 5. Scotty, he brings to the table things that I talked about with Kuminga with defensive versatility, but he brings something like my number 1 player who, I mean, I don't want to ruin it, but we know it's Cade. And he brings a feel to the game offensively that is not a common skill for a player his size. He played Denver. It was Denver, the game where it was a close game throughout the entire game. And then in the 3rd and 4th quarter, he was the best player in the game. He locked up Jokic on a couple possessions. He was driving to the hoop full force. He was kicking out after drawing 3 defenders, and he was picking his spots very well. His wingspan is 7'4", and he knows how to use every single inch of it. I've been dramatically impressed with him. I had him in a tier below. So my draft tiers, I had Cade by himself on the top, and then I had Kuminga, Jalen Green, Mobley, and Suggs, I think in that order, in a tier below Cade. And then I had Scotty Barnes in a tier by himself right below that. I feel like I underrated him, but it was almost because I couldn't see the clarity of what his role was going to be based off of what I had seen in high school versus what I saw at Florida State. But now it's just, it doesn't matter what his role is. He's whatever the team needs. We talked about last week how he stepped in to be the primary playmaker. He was the point guard for the large majority of the minutes for the Toronto Raptors while Fred VanVleet was out. and he filled that role admirably. I think he's going to be a player where we talked about before. You brought up Sengun. We talked about Sabonis, how they're like a 70%, 20% of MVP candidate Nikola Jokic. I think that Scotty Barnes is probably the first legitimate facsimile of Giannis that we've seen in this league. His ability to push the break, to be able to dunk the ball after dribbling it 3 times from the other baseline, and his playmaking skills are much more refined than Giannis's were. Even today, I mean, you could make the argument that Scotty's a higher field passer than Giannis is even right now, and I wouldn't bat an eyelash for that. So I love Scotty. I love his development. I don't think it's going to be long. There are weak stretches in this season where I think he's Toronto's best player, but then he has not like a rookie wall, but he'll come back to earth for 3 games before he gets back into it and has another 28-point outburst where you're saying what is going on, and he's hitting pull-up threes. But Scotty Barnes is incredible. I'm super excited that he's in the league, and I'm excited that he's fit in so well with the Toronto Raptors and made them one of the more watchable teams in the NBA this year.
Yeah, and he's already ahead of where Giannis is. He's ahead of where Giannis is pretty much.
Developmental-wise.
Yeah, developmental-wise. Like, Giannis this young was still so raw. So pretty great to see that. Shooting-wise, he's around like 30%. That's kind of his area that he needs to improve in. And he seems to have a love for the game that I think is important when we think about improving in these areas that certain players don't quite have.
And all I have to say about that,
wish I talked about Cade more.
Yeah.
Okay. Cade Cunningham. So I want to stand by a take that I had earlier where I said that he was one of the 20 best players in the league. I think that he's reaffirmed that maybe formerly outrageous take early on. And what we've seen from him as of late, he's averaging 21, 7, and 5 since he returned from his stint where he didn't play for 5 games. He's motivating winning. And the attribute that we begin to see more and more clearly is he has command in a way that the only players that have the same amount of command are like Luka, Chris Paul, and LeBron James. And his ability to decide what the pace of the game is, to decide what shot happens in the Pistons offense, to decide who is going to be defending what set and what part of the floor. He is navigating the game in a way that I believe is to be much deeper than 90% of the players that are playing in the league. I think he's one of the, these are a lot of the things talking about Cade is difficult because I feel like I talk about him a lot. So I feel like I can't remember what I've said on record and haven't said on record, but I think he's one of the 10 smartest players in the league already. He's one of the 10 best passers in the league already. And he is motivating winning basketball on a dirt roster. Like, he's making Marvin Bagley look like a steal at the draft deadline. And this is at the trade deadline. And this is a player whose career was in the garbage, in the gutter in Sacramento, which is the gutter of all gutters. So for Cade to be on a team where it's Corey Joseph and Hamidou Diallo, and they're geeking out wins against Toronto. They're geeking out wins over Atlanta, where he's playing 40-plus minutes. He's motivating awesome plays in clutch buckets and overtime, sweeping hook shots. He's dunking on people. His perimeter game has surpassed my wildest expectations for what it could be when I was watching him at Montverde, when I thought he was going to be an incredible NBA player. He wasn't the perimeter threat that he is now back then. And he's a player that he could legitimately be. Like, he could have Damian Lillard's skill set, but also have Chris Paul's skill set. Like, I don't want to put a ceiling on Cade Cunningham because I don't think that there is a way for him to not be one of the best players that is playing frequently in the league. And the Pistons are going to need to try really, really hard to mess it up. And even if they do, like, Cade might just make the playoffs with Marvin Bagley as his second best player, because when he actually, like, I feel like when he actually gets after it, they're like, the Boston Celtics struggle immensely with the Detroit Pistons. And it's partially because Sadiq Bey shoots freaking 75% from 3 when we play them. But it's also because Cade Cunningham imprints his will on the game in a way that no other player at his age like since I can't remember when has ever done. And I obviously am head over heels for him as a player. And I just think I got nervous earlier when they went on, what were they? They won 5 of their last 7 at one stretch. And it was beating teams that are, if not bona fide playoff teams, playoff bubble teams. And I was saying, oh my God, Detroit is going to drop and they're going to be the 5th pick and they're not going to get a player that can help Cade. Like, what the heck? This is going to be annoying. But I'm hoping I don't want them to restrict his minutes because I want to watch him play as much as possible. But I'm sure that the roster will balance out and they'll lose enough to still be one of the 3 best rosters. But the Pistons have something special here, and he should be a player that if you haven't watched more than 1 or 2 games of Cade where he's just playing your hometown team, you need to go online and watch a condensed game. You need to find the next game that he plays a team that's good and watch him, because he's meeting all-star players and he's outplaying all-star players and he's really good. I don't think he's bad at anything. I mean, I didn't even talk about him defensively, and I think he's like a defensive quarterback. So, I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about him. I just like I every time I watch him, he does things that I'm impressed with to no end. So I'm all in on Cade, as I always have been. Every time I'm in, I go deeper. So I think I have 4 Cade jerseys now. I think I just got my 4th one in the mail. They're all different. I got an Oklahoma State one. I'm in on Cade.
I think Cade needs to seriously file a restraining order against you after this podcast, because the way you love him is the way that no one else is loved in the world. That's all I'm going to say.
Fair enough.
Cade's
an absolute franchise changer, and it's a cherry pick, but I cherry picked going back 11 games, and he's averaging 22, 7.5 rebounds, and 6 assists in the last 11 games. And it's just like, imagine if that was the first 11 games of the season, people would be losing their minds about a rookie playing like that. And it's really impressive. And that doesn't even touch on the defensive end, which I think he's done really well. And yeah, just watching him against the Celtics, and like the Celtics have been so hot, and unless Luka gets away with giving high five, then we've been really tough to beat lately. And
how did they reverse that? What was that? It was an obvious foul. Why? I thought it had to be conclusive evidence to reverse a call. What is going on?
But the Celtics have been a tough team to beat lately, except against Detroit, and Mr. Cunningham is a big reason for that.
All right, in the thinking about time here, because I do want to do the trivia at the end. I will give my top 5. I will not ask for your opinions on this. It'll just be my top 5. I did it a little differently. When you said top 5 favorite players, I did my favorite players, maybe not the most talented players. So I have my top 5 favorite players, not in the NBA or in the NBA. So number 5, I went with Scoot Henderson.
Yes, Scoot, yes.
Solely because his name is Scoot, and I'm 100% drafting a guy named Scoot. Number 4, a little unorthodox, not on anyone's board, Air Bud. Great athleticism. I think he can outrun any NBA player on the court. Fastest guy.
He's got to be older. He's got to be older than 21. Is he 3 years old? That's older than 21.
Years or human years. I didn't know. I should count on that one. I think he's still under 20 in human years. But listen.
Great eager to please.
Very eager to please. Great catch and shoot guy. He needs to work on his dribbling a little bit more. But the greatest thing about him is a lot of franchise guys are not loyal, will leave you. Air Bud is going to be loyal to your franchise, never leave you. Number 3 had someone different, but after hearing Biddy's talk about him, number 3 now is Victor Wembanyama.
He's just changing his list on the fly. I love it.
NBA young boy. I don't even know if he plays basketball, but I figured his name's NBA young boy, so he must be pretty good. Number 2, Jesus Shuttlesworth, one of the best prospects in the country. And then number 1, my favorite basketball players in the world. When I'm at a Celtics game and it's halftime, nothing brings me greater joy than the children playing on the court at an NBA game. There's nothing better than betting with your friend next to you, betting a beer on which team will win the halftime game. There's always a couple different guys on the court. There's the one kid that thinks he's Kobe Bryant, but he's actually bad J.R. Smith. There's a couple of kids just run up and down the court. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They're just there to do cardio. And then there's just that one kid on one team that is way too effing big to be on the court with everybody else. He's probably like 18 against 7-year-olds. I love all of it. I bet on it, and it's very entertaining. So my number one are the children at the NBA halftime games.
I love the pulling NBA threes.
Crazy.
Yeah, very, very different lists, but
it was good balance. Good to balance this out.
Yes.
Also, like, dogs, they appear loyal, but like if another team comes with just a jar of peanut butter in free agency, then Air Bud might be dipping.
You know what? I did not think of that. Air Bud's off my list. NBA Young Boy, you're back, number 4.
It doesn't even spell it. It doesn't even stand for a National Basketball Association.
And the other broke again. The one thing also is Air Bud played other sports, so I don't know if he's loyal to basketball. Just saying.
You might play some hardball in negotiation. Just say, hey.
Yeah, you know what? Air Bud sounds like
I'm in the gridiron.
Off the list.
I'm gonna go play volleyball.
Never know.
All right, hit us with some trivia.
So I didn't tell you the theme before this, and considering today we're recording on Selection Sunday, I wanted to go all NCAA tournament trivia for you folks. So These questions are pretty damn tough, I'm not going to lie. The way we're going to do it is we're going to give one of you a chance to answer. The other one can steal if the person gets it wrong. We'll try to go fast, rapid fire. All right?
Okay.
Biddies, we'll start with you. Let me just make sure my sounders are in order. All right, Biddies, question number 1. What school was the only 16 seed to win a tournament game?
UMBC.
Yep, in 2018 versus Virginia. That was one of the easier questions, Biddy.
The Air Bud, Golden Retriever. The Air Buds, Golden Retrievers.
Game.
Great game. Let's see. Let's give you an easier one. Seamus.
I would have messed up and said Loyola or something.
What school has the most number 1 seeds in NCAA tournament history, men's side?
Number 1 seeds. UCLA. Oh, come on.
Biddy's chance to steal.
Let's go with those Blue Devils from Duke.
Tar Heels. UNC with 7 number 1 seeds in their history. All right, so that was your question, Seamus. Biddies, you go first. What was the lowest seed to ever win the NCAA tournaments? I don't need the actual team, but if you want to say the team, that's fine. Just the seed number, the lowest seed to ever win the NCAA tournament.
I believe it was the 8-seeded NC State Wolfpack.
Seed is correct. Team is incorrect.
Was it Villanova?
It was Villanova in 1985.
What was UConn seeded when Kemba won?
I think 7.
Yeah. Okay.
I believe it was a 7 seed. All right, Seamus, you're trailing 2-0 right now. Let me find you an easy one. All right. What school has the most national titles?
What school has the most national titles? I want to say the team I already said, but I don't know.
Go with your gut, buddy.
UCLA again.
They didn't have the number 1
challenge.
Title.
We want to challenge the validity of that question.
All right, I am going to try to even this up by giving Biddies a more challenging question.
Getting screwed.
Biddies. Which player has the record for most points scored in the tournament for their entire career? So most career tournament points, NCAA tournament. I will give you a hint. They were a one-time NBA All-Star, and clearly they need to have volume. So it's someone who's been to the tournament a lot.
They've only been one.
So that gives you a hint that they were like a good player, but not like Hall of Fame worthy.
And they were a one-time All-Star?
One-time All-Star.
Played during out. Like, I've watched this player.
I've watched this player.
No, how have you watched?
Have they played in our lifetime?
I don't want to give up too much, but we are probably younger.
We're younger than him?
Christian Laettner.
That's a good guess.
That's a great guess.
Wow.
Christian Laettner has a career 407 points in the NCAA tournament over 23 games. Great guess.
Wow.
All right, Seamus. We'll do a few more. Seamus, who was the last one-and-done freshman to win a national title before leaving for the NBA?
Okay.
So it's a player who won a national championship. They were obviously pretty good because they were one and done. Who was that player? I'll give you a hint because I gave
Mikal Bridges.
You
I didn't want to hint.
wait for the hint, did you?
I didn't want to hint. I didn't want to hint.
Middies for the steal?
Anthony Davis.
Close. There was an Anthony in the name. Carmelo Anthony.
Wow, really?
Yep. I mean, one and done went away a long time ago, if you remember.
Anthony Davis.
I mean, I'm sorry.
Anthony Davis was more recent.
Yeah.
Yeah, my bad. But no, Carmelo.
What? No, you had the wrong answer.
I had the wrong answer? This damn
Wow.
website.
Anthony, I mean, I don't know. Did Mikal Bridges play 2 years?
You know what? A point for both teams. There we go. I got to stop going to nba.tournament.com. something for my answers.
Maybe
All right.
Player of the tournament. I don't know, but AD
Player
won.
of the tournament?
AD won, and
All
then he went to the league.
So we're now at 2-4 because everyone got a point there. I lost 2 points because I can't read the internet correctly. We'll do a few more. All right. Biddies, I believe you're up.
Yeah.
What team was the most recent to repeat as back-to-back champions?
The Florida Gators.
That is correct. 05, 06, 06, 07. Good team. I think they had Al Horford, Joakim Noah. That was a squad with Billy Donovan back in the day. All right, a couple more. Then I just want to do a couple really tough ones after this. Seamus, an easier one, I think, easier comparatively. Which school has the current active longest appearance streak in the NCAA tournament?
Kansas.
31 years.
I knew that one.
Years in a row making the tournament. Insane. All right.
Years.
Unfortunately, I looked it up. Unfortunately, the UConn repeat, it did come before Mark Dagnall was an assistant in Florida. Shame.
When's Mark Dagnall joining us?
No, we need to get him on.
Yeah.
Mention him more than any other podcast in the world.
We really do. We really do. All right, who was up? Who did I just ask that to? It was Kansas, right? So that was.
I got Kansas. Biddy's turn.
Yeah.
All right, couple toughies. So I want to exit with some toughies really quick. This one's probably the toughest of them all. What was the worst record of a team that made an NCAA tournament? And I just want to know the number of wins. So, like, how many wins do you think was the worst team to ever make it, the tournament record-wise?
I'll go with 9 wins.
Seamus, it's a shot in the dark here.
13. 14.
3 teams have made the NCAA tournament with 11 wins,
Oh,
going
what's
11-18 with a 37% winning percentage.
That's bad. That's a bad
They
winning
just
percentage.
won the conference tournament.
They got hot at the right time. Shay, your chance to catch up. This one I think is doable as you are a big-time basketball fan and avid NCAA fan. How many times have all 1 seeds made it to the Final Four?
6 times, Steve.
Biddies for the steal.
1 time.
What?
I think that's game. If you got that one, that's game. 1 time is the correct answer. It only happened once in 2008 when UNC, Kansas, Memphis, and UCLA all made the Final Four. If you remember correctly, that was the Derrick Rose year where he made it the championship versus, I believe, Kansas and Mario Chalmers. Yeah. Good times.
I didn't need the ball.
I had a couple other ones. I was going to ask you who had the most points in a single tournament, which was Glenn Rice, only coach to win both NCAA tournament and NBA championship in their career.
Larry Brown.
Anything else that we left off the board? This one no one was going to get. This mid-major conference has the most national championships, the Missouri Valley Conference, but that doesn't really count because Cincinnati has 2 for them, and they've since moved on. And it was all back in like the 40s when like segregation was still around, so none of it really counts.
I wouldn't have gotten any of those right. I need more. I needed the NCAA questions to be geared toward NBA players out of the NCAA. All right. Well, that was a fun show, fun trivia. We should do stuff like that more. It'll be fun to fill out the brackets. I'm sure we'll be talking some college hoops next week. Let's close out for my Wheelhouse Basketball biddies, Seamus, Steve. Rate, review, subscribe. Toodaloo.